Top of the morning, and thank you for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we are talking a little bit about what players and teams currently have the luck of the Irish, as well as other news and notes around the NHL. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Make sure you check out our website down below, i80sports.com, which, hey, if you like the t-shirt I'm currently wearing for St. Paddy's Day, you can check out such merch at i80sports.com. We've got more things beyond just St. Paddy's Day merch. Baseball season is around the corner. We've got hats. We've got shirts. It's still a little bit cold out in some neck of the woods, so we've still got some hoodies available. So, guys, make sure that you hit up our shop for all of your I-80 Sports needs. And of course, as usual, make sure you drop a follow on us at I-80_sports NHL, which our Twitter's been more and more active, and our followers have been even more active. So you got to make sure that you're following us for all the latest news and notes happening around the NHL. And as always, if you could please like, comment, and subscribe for more content such as this. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. A little tired. Was playing hockey all weekend. I played in a tournament down in Toms River with the Manalapan Police Department hockey team. We had a good time down there. Thanks for having me again, guys. If you have me again, we'll get them next time, hopefully. And my team had a playoff game last night where we lost, but I don't think the league was set these playoffs up fairly, but this is not a beer league hockey show. We talk about hockey that matters here. My team in Woodbridge, I'm sure none of you really care about.
Hey, a night of hockey is better than a night at home in some cases. So you know what? All the better. But I think with that said, it's time to segue into our NHL news before we start talking in the middle of this video on some teams and players that are experiencing the luck of the Irish. Because if you could not tell, today on I-80 Sports, we are celebrating St. Paddy's Day 2 days early with a little bit of green, a little bit of luck of the Irish. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that later in this video. So you got to make sure that you check that out. But first, we're going to start off with some NHL news as we normally do, which coming right off the top here, I'm going to go as in order from this past week as I possibly can. The St. Louis, I'm going to be able to speak someday, and it's going to be magical, and it's going to be amazing. Let's start that again. The St. Louis Blues have re-signed their starting goaltender Jordan Binnington to a 6-year, $36 million deal, which, quick reactions, Tom, how do you feel about this deal for Binnington?
I think it's fair. It's $6 million a year, which is, on par for a goalie, for a top goalie. I know there's been some concern with Binnington over the years. Obviously he won that cup 2 years ago, but he was shaky in the playoffs last year. But I think it's a fair deal. I think $6 million for a goalie is probably right in the ballpark for a starting goalie. I think it's a fair deal all around. 6 years isn't really bad either. It's not like you got him locked in for 10 or 15. All around, I think it's okay. I don't really have a problem with it. Alas, I'm not a St. Louis Blues fan, so if we do have some Blues fans on here, please drop something in the comments. Let us know what you think about it.
Yeah, just looking at it right now, it's not a bad deal. 6 years seems like a long time, but when you consider that he is 27 years old, it's not that long in essence. So it takes him up until he's 33 years old. So it kind of puts him at that perfect time and perfect age, after that contract is said and done. That and he hopefully will be just as effective as he is right now. Currently this season in 20 games played, he's 9-6 with a 2.81 goals against average and a 9.06 save percentage. So it'll be interesting just to monitor the rest of the season and how it goes just from earning this contract. Maybe there's the thought that, all right, maybe he was trying to earn his, previous contract, but now it's going to be left to be seen where he goes from here. So it'll be something to track over the next course of time. Personally, I think this is a good signing for St. Louis. This is the first real solid goaltender that they've had in a while. So I think it only makes sense to lock him up in this case. So good signing here by the St. Louis. Next, coming right off the top, we had a trade this week. It was a bit of a minor trade, but still worth talking a little bit about. The Columbus Blue Jackets acquired defenseman Mikko Lehtinen from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for prospect goaltender, and I am so sorry, Finnish people, if I mispronounce his name. You can hop all over me, but it's fine. Vaini Vivalainen. So that's the goaltender that Toronto had acquired from Columbus, which pretty minor deal, but still worth talking about. Tom, what's your reaction to this trade?
A little bit of a head scratcher here from, I guess, from a Toronto standpoint. Lettinen is playing over in the KHL right now with Jokerit. He's averaging about a point per game right now. He's 17 games, 8 goals, 9 assists over there. Toronto, and they traded him for essentially an AHL goalie. I mean, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. Toronto, despite having a good year this year, despite playing better, despite having some people saying, hey, maybe they'll end their curse this year, they do still need some help on the back end. To me, albeit it's a minor deal, and I understand that, I just don't understand what the reasoning behind it was. I don't know. Maybe I know they had brought, and I'm gonna butcher the hell out of his name too. I'm gonna butcher his name over Vevalainen. I know the Marlies have him over here. It could very well be that Lettinen just doesn't want to leave Finland for a while, and I mean that might be it too. So you figure, okay, you trade him over, you get rid of him, and he's not our problem anymore. That could be the case too, but I don't know. I just don't know the reasoning behind it from the Maple Leaf standpoint.
Totally understandable in terms of your reasoning. One thing that I thought of in Vivalainen's case for Columbus, this is actually a very beneficial move for him right now. And a lot of people are saying, how is it? You know, he's going to be playing behind Frederik Andersen. Well, here's the thing. With Columbus, he was logjam behind Joonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins in Columbus. There was no path for him to get up to the NHL. I think with the Maple Leafs, I think there's a clear path for him to get into the NHL now, especially if Toronto does not commit full time, going forward to Frederik Andersen, which there have been some rumors that have been going around that he could be a person that could find his way out in the coming years. So it's going to be interesting to track. One thing to keep in mind with Mikko Lehtinen is he is 27 years old. He's not a young prospect by any means, but he's still a person of note because, as Tom had mentioned before, he is averaging a point per game in the KHL. And I think this is a beneficial deal for Columbus if Mikko Lehtinen does come over to the NHL game. But I think that's just going to be something that we're going to have to track over time. Overall, I thought this was an even trade for both teams. I know some people are going to disagree with me, and Toronto fans are certainly going to disagree with me, but you know what? Sometimes you need to admit that when you make a trade for a need, sometimes you're not going to necessarily like what you're going to give up, but I think this is going to be a more beneficial deal for Toronto in the long term. You don't like it now, but maybe in the coming years you'll like it. We'll just have to see. We'll see what happens. Now, Tom and I were Nostradamus last week, and we talked about the NHL TV deal. Just this kind of speculation because we didn't know if we were actually going to get any kind of real word about the NHL TV deal. And then, poof, what do you know? The next day, we find out all this information about the NHL TV deal. So here's the deal. Much to the chagrin of Tom and I, ESPN and the NHL have agreed on a 7-year broadcast contract. And it does seem like they're going to be getting some big marquee games from this. ABC is also going to be broadcasting some very important NHL games starting in the 2021 and 2022 season. Tom, what's your reaction to this?
I mean, I guess the only good thing about it is that the deal, like I predicted, is only for half of the coverage. We don't know who's going to get the second half right now. It is expected NBC is going to pick up the second half. So, like the NHL they wanted multiple broadcast partners like the other big 3 leagues in this country. And, well, I don't want to say this country. I want to say this continent because we have teams in Canada and the NHL, obviously, and there's teams in Canadian team in Major League Baseball and a Canadian team in the NBA as well. So on this North American continent between the U.S. and Canada, they want multiple broadcast partners. I guess it's to get their exposure, to get the exposure out a little more. And I'm thinking maybe that's why Fox didn't go crazy for it, because if you really look at Fox right now, they have Fox, FX, and their 2 FS channels. And I think Fox, if they were going to take it, they wanted the whole thing just for them. So I think that's why it was not going to happen. I'm just hoping they treat it good this time. I guess the thing that ESPN Plus does have going for it, we are moving into a streaming type of world for television. I am myself. I'm a cord cutter. I don't have cable. I stream a lot of different things. I'm an ESPN Plus subscriber, like I had mentioned last week. As much as I dislike ESPN, I do like ESPN Plus. You get a lot of options on there. You don't have the cheap, cheesy Sports Center stuff or pardon the interruption. You just pick your game and you watch it. And that might be a little bit of a positive. NHL TV is actually going to shut down next year, and ESPN Plus is going to take that over. So that's kind of a plus as well. You should, if you were an ESPN Plus subscriber, you'll actually be able to watch any game you want on there. They'll be taking over all the NHL games. Obviously, the ones that are NBC exclusive, they probably won't be able to show. But I mean that's sort of a positive too. So I'm hoping this time around, because you're not jammed on just two channels anymore, that it'll get the respect it deserves. It won't get pushed over for World Series of Poker. It won't turn into them saying, "Oh well, since the NBA is back, we're just going to push you off to whatever night we feel like putting you on." Because if you guys do remember, there used to be a Wednesday night game of the week on ESPN back in the early 2000s. As soon as they picked up the NBA back in '02, and it's not a knock on NBA, it's not a knock on basketball, it's not a knock on basketball fans. But as soon as ESPN got the NBA, which was a little bit of a bigger thing, they threw the NHL to the side, despite the NHL really being their rock for almost the previous 10 years. So, like I said, hopefully it works out a little bit better this time with the streaming options. We shall see. We shall see.
It's going to be interesting to see. This is a positive for the NHL of trying to build revenue ultimately and to become a bigger product again, as they were in the 1990s and early 2000s, because those who remember the NHL in the 90s and 2000 and early 2000s prior to the 2005 lockout, the NHL was insanely popular in the United States. Was insanely popular. So this is an exciting time for the NHL to maybe get back into that limelight, depending on how ESPN uses the NHL on their coverage daily, weekly. So it is going to be something to monitor. We didn't necessarily want ESPN, but we're going to see what happens. We're just going to have to see how ESPN handles the product going forward. Now, more Buffalo news, and well, Buffalo fans, you're not going to be happy about this, and you're probably ready to start just a mass riot at this point. And you know what? I don't blame any of you guys at this point. You guys go riot in Buffalo. But Buffalo center and captain Jack Eichel is out for, quote, the foreseeable future, according to head coach Ralph Krueger. And what was cited was an upper body injury that he sustained during, training camp. And Ralph Krueger has stated that it could be an 8-week recovery time, which, spoiler alert for those who aren't aware, that takes you to the end of the season, the regular season, that is. So I find, just the amount of time he could be recovering interesting. I find the time of this injury ultimately, way too, not convenient is the word, but coincidental in this sense. So I guess the question becomes, is Buffalo biding time to find a deal? Or is Jack actually dealing with a legitimate injury? Tom, what are your thoughts on this? Legit or biding time?
I think it is a little bit of both, and I think it's for their sake. I think at this point, and do not quote me on this, I don't know. I think at this point that somewhere in these last few weeks that they may have agreed to just say, listen, this is not working out anymore. And Eichel probably saying, listen, I got this nagging injury. If I keep playing and I get hurt, it doesn't help either one of us. I'm stuck here and you're stuck with me. So I think that's it. I think he is legitimately hurt. I don't think he's seriously hurt. But I also think it's something that where if he does play with whatever he has, he can hurt it worse and be out for a longer amount of time. And I just don't think he wants to be there any longer. And I think management feels the same way. I don't think they want him there any longer than they have to have him there. But if you let him play, you risk him getting hurt. You risk him getting hurt more and more and more. The same thing happened back in 2018 with the Rangers and Ryan McDonough. McDonough was fine when he went to Tampa. But remember, the Rangers held him out for about 3 weeks before he got traded because for the same reason. They didn't want him getting hurt. Now, I don't know about Eichel. He may go at the trade deadline, but I just can't see it this year with the way everything's going. with where you may be able to send him to, with money constraints, with COVID, with all that stuff. I do think that they're just going to run him till the end of the season, and Buffalo might just play for a lottery. Keep him out, and Buffalo might just play for a lottery spot. That's the way it's looking. And then, in the summertime, you revisit the trade partners, and you get him out of Buffalo, and everybody goes home happy. We shall see.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how this rolls out because I think it is a little bit of both. I think that Jack Eichel is currently dealing with an injury of some form that he doesn't want to get more serious. That could hurt his value. But when you also think realistically in terms of, Jack Eichel right now and the potential of him getting dealt, he's got a $10 million contract right now, and it's not a short-term deal. It is a long-term deal. So the stars need to align perfectly for Buffalo to be able to make a deal that makes sense for them, but also makes sense for another team to pick up Jack Eichel right now. So there is the distinct possibility that, you don't see Jack Eichel in a Buffalo uniform for the remainder of this year, but you might not find him in any other uniform for the remainder of this year. And that if he does end up changing uniforms, it's going to happen in the summertime and it's not going to happen before June. So it is going to be something that we monitor over the coming weeks. We may even, have some other people to discuss this with at some point down the line, but you're just going to have to watch and find out, to be honest. So we'll monitor this as we go. Speaking of disgruntled players at the moment, there is a unhappy fellow in San Jose right now playing for the Sharks. You may have heard of him. He's a rather popular defenseman. His name is Erik Karlsson. Not a very household name. It's okay if you've never heard of Erik Karlsson in the NHL. It's totally fine. But to be serious now, Erik Karlsson has expressed how upset he is currently with what's going on in San Jose, specifically the talks around needing to rebuild amongst the fan base, the need to rebuild with other media sources talking about this a little bit more frequently now. So he expressed in an interview the other day, quote, and this is quote directly from Erik Karlsson himself. Obviously, I did not sign here to go through a rebuild, to go through what I did for 10 years in Ottawa. We need to find a way to build with the core that we have. I do think we have a good group of guys here, unquote. So, Tom, what are your thoughts to what Erik Karlsson said? Do you feel like San Jose does need a rebuild, or do you think that Erik Karlsson is accurate with his assessment of the team currently?
You know what? It's a little bit of both here. I guess just the unfortunate part for Karlsson is that when he went over there, they were still considered Stanley Cup contenders. They were still a playoff team every year. But at the same time, they weren't getting any younger. Thornton was old. Marlowe was old. You still had Pavelski. Pavelski left town. I mean, you may need to. I don't know if you can retool with Evander Kane as your top forward. He's a good player, but I just don't know if you can build around Evander Kane as your top forward. I'm a little lost with that. I mean, maybe they can make some noise in the summer. Maybe they want to be one of the partners for Eichel, but that may hurt their cap too. I don't know. It's the unfortunate part with guys like Karlsson when you sign these mega deals and you're the center of attention in some place. You go somewhere and you expect to be one of the guys, and now it's the same thing over again. He was the one who demanded a trade out of Ottawa, and if it's so bad in San Jose, how could he not have that? How could he not see in the future there? They were an older team. They weren't young. They weren't up and coming. And I really do think that, remember that summer too, John Tavares was that was one of his rumored destinations. And a few people thought when he said he was leaving the Islanders, a few people thought that's where he was going. But I think, what Tavares thought was, well, these guys are getting older, and in a few years, what's happening now is going to happen. They're not going to be that good anymore, and it's going to be the same situation as I had in Long Island. Maybe that's why he picked Toronto. And, Karlsson, maybe should have thought this over and said, well, this is an older team, and they may be in a decline. So I just have a hard time believing that they can retool that team without getting a top-flight guy. And I just don't even know if they bring Jack Eichel into San Jose, will that even help?
I think it's a really difficult situation because on one hand, your team isn't getting any younger. Just coming right off the top in terms of thinking any guys 29 or older of your core. Evander Kane is 29, which realistically he might not remain with the team that much longer. I'll get into that in a second because there is something interesting to talk about with that. Erik Karlsson, the man that we're talking about here, he's 30 years old. Logan Couture, your captain, he's also 31. Mark-Edward Vlasic, he's 33. Devin Dubnyk, 34, which he's currently your platoon goaltender. Brent Burns is 35. Patrick Marleau, 41. So you've got names on there that are on the old side that you can't necessarily build around at the moment. Probably the only person that you can realistically keep building around is Logan Couture and Erik Karlsson. But to play devil's advocate, you do have some other names that are interesting on there that are ages 29 and below. Tomas Hertel, 27 years old. He's someone that you can absolutely build around. Kevin LeBanc, 25 years old. Timo Meier, 24 years old. Really big names for the San Jose Sharks, and not nothing names. These are guys who do produce. Another name that also sticks out to me in terms of maybe that younger core coming up, Mario Ferraro, who's 22 years old, just emerging on the defensive core for San Jose. He could be a name that sticks on that core for the years going forward. But you have this crew of players right now that are producing. Hertel, 14 points in 19 games played. Timo Meier has 17 points in 23 games. Kevin LeBanc, 17 points in 25 games. So your younger core is getting it done. Logan Couture, your captain, 22 points in 25 games. And Evander Kane, who is 29, 23 points in 25 games. So they're finding ways to score. They're finding ways to produce. Honestly, for me, I do feel like that San Jose can get away with retooling, but their window is very, 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 very close to closing. So they need to do it very carefully. They can't make short-sighted moves. They need to be methodical with the moves that they are going to make. If they're going to make moves, if they feel like they need to. Personally, if it were me, I don't know how San Jose fans feel, but just eyeballing this roster, I think the first immediate upgrade that you need is at goaltender. I don't know if I fully buy into, obviously, Devin Dubnyk, Martin Jones. I don't know if I buy into them. I don't know much, admittedly, about this other kid on the roster as one game played, Alexei Melnichuk, but he is young. I don't know what he is as a prospect, unfortunately, kind of catching me off guard with that. But who knows? Maybe that could be a kid that San Jose could eventually rely on. Maybe not. Maybe somebody's listening who's a San Jose fan and laughing at me right now. It's entirely possible. But I think that is an immediate area of upgrade that San Jose needs to get on the phones with and see what they can do and make a move there. I think no progress is going to be made currently with your old goaltending core. But we're just going to see how San Jose reacts to the deadline. And certainly in the coming weeks, we're going to be talking more about the trade deadline. So if you're curious about, all the details on trade deadline coming up, make sure you stick around in the coming weeks as we're going to be discussing that in much further detail. But for now, we're going to move on to why I'm wearing this ridiculous hat today, because it's time to talk some luck of the Irish, which when we're thinking about St. Paddy's Day, it's an Irish holiday, very green, very luck-based in general. So Tom and I picked a couple players, a couple teams that we feel right now are running with the luck of the Irish. That's the only way that you can explain their success right now is the luck of the Irish. That's the only way that you can explain it. So we're going to be diving into this. We're going to talk about what current NHL team we feel has luck of the Irish. We're not talking right now about all-time luck of the Irish because look, that would just take way too long to possibly even explain and also maybe even discredit what a team has done all time. But in this case, we're talking about a team that we feel that this current year has the luck of the Irish, with them, especially given some of the circumstances that they've had to deal with the division realignments. So segues are good. Tom, what team did you pick that had the luck of the Irish?
I got to go with the defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning here. Granted, they're the defending champions, and I know that, but it seems like every year, a team will have a cup hangover or they'll get stuck with some rough competition. And they normally do get stuck with the rough competition in the Atlantic Division. You have the Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs. Sometimes Montreal goes on a run depending on how they feel. But they don't have that problem this year. They're in, I don't know, I don't want to consider the Central Division a weak division, but it's not nearly as strong as some of the others. Obviously, you have Florida and Carolina giving them a little bit of heat, but I still think that they're leaps and bounds better than both of those teams. You also have Chicago over there, who's sort of like been a little bit of a thorn in their side too. But I still think leaps and bounds when it comes to Carolina, Florida, and Chicago. I think Tampa's still better than all three, and they just happen to have the luck of playing them more often than not this year. Another team, due to the broken Atlantic Division this year that comes to mind, are the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're away from the Boston Bruins. They're tormentors. They're away from Tampa Bay, who you could consider knocking them out with a loss or two. Obviously, you had an early challenge in there from the Montreal Canadiens from the Habs. You obviously have McDavid and Draisaitl over there with the Oilers. You have Calgary, who's sort of been a seesaw team, and Vancouver, who's been disappointing to start. They've been getting a little bit better lately, but right now it just seems like with all the uncertainty over in the Canadian division, Toronto seems to just be pulling away with it right now and not looking back.
Yeah, and I actually got to openly admit here, Tom stole my choice and made this so much more difficult for me. But it's a great choice. I mean, Tampa has it so free right now, so free in their division at the current moment. But I found another team with the luck of the Irish currently, especially after watching last night's game between the New Jersey Devils and New York Islanders. Sorry to trigger us New Jersey Devils fans out there by the terrible officiating yesterday, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But the team that I'm alluding to here is the New York Islanders. I feel like they're running right now with the luck of the Irish. They're on a 9-game winning streak, which I don't know if that's fully on them. They have dodged bullet after bullet with some calls that have gone their way that have not gone the way of other teams. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Yes, it's not lucky that John Gabriel Pajot and Noah Dobson, are going onto the COVID list. Yes, that is bad, and I hope they get well soon. No, it is also not lucky that Anders Lee is now going to be out for the remainder of the year. But want to know what is lucky in the case of Anders Lee going down? The sudden emergence of Kiefer Bellows. Holy moly, like 5 goals, 2 games. Have yourself a day, kid. Have yourself a couple games. And hopefully you perform this week on my fantasy team or you're out. I swear. Don't make me waste my pick there. But yeah, this 9-game win streak, the only way to explain it, it's the luck of the Irish right now for the New York Islanders here, especially in such a tight division in the East right now. It's the only way to describe it there. I do agree with Tampa. I do agree with the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. And actually, there's going to be a player that I allude to in a little bit with the luck of the Irish on the Toronto Maple Leafs side. But hey, segues are cool again. Why don't we talk about a current NHL player with the luck of the Irish? We were just talking about teams. So that being said, what player in the league right now is performing so well with the only explanation being luck of the Irish? Tom, who's your choice?
Well, he plays on a team that wears green. And every Ranger fan on here, this will ring a bell to you. Remember? Zook. And that's Matt Zuccarello. He's playing over in Minnesota right now and pretty much was given, kind of just no expectations over there for a while. Nobody had any expectations for him. Kirill Kaprizov came over, same thing. He wasn't really highly touted. He was just another guy coming over from the KHL. Well, look at what's going on there right now. Zuccarello and Kirill Kaprizov are dominating right now. They are dominating. I watched a little bit of the Minnesota game yesterday against Phoenix. Both of them just looking great. Both playing very well. And if you really look at the Wild right now, they're turning some heads. They are turning some heads out there in the West Division. They're in second place. You have Colorado and St. Louis, who everybody thought was surefire playoff teams, which they still are. They're not out. They're not out by any means. But they're looking up at the Minnesota Wild, who everybody said these guys are going to be bottom feeders. They're still a couple years away. Marco Rossi isn't there yet. You're still stuck with those albatross contracts and Parise and Suter. They just dumped off Eric Stahl. But wow. The Wild are turning some heads. And, Zuccarello, loved him as a Ranger. I wasn't obsessed with him like some other Ranger fans were. He was good with the Rangers. I liked him, and went down to Dallas, and now he's up there in Minnesota, man, and he's having a good season. So you know what, good for him. and good for the Wild, just good for Minnesota in general. It's a state of hockey, and I do feel like NHL hockey in the state has been neglected a little bit. So, maybe they'll turn. I mean, I don't know if they'll win a Stanley Cup this year, but, maybe this will be the beginning of them turning the corner, maybe, having Minnesota be a top player in the league. We shall see.
It is certainly lucky that Matt Zuccarello gets to play alongside Kirill Kaprizov right now, because certainly I did not anticipate Zuccarello making an impact like he has been making this year so far. Now, for my picks, I've got two players in mind here, and the first one might surprise you. The first one, Mitch Marner. And a lot of you are probably wondering, just like, how is he lucky? He's just talented. Which, yeah, he is talented. I'm not denying that. I'm not going to discredit the amount of talent that Mitch Marner has. He's a gem. He's an absolute blue chip. No deny there. But I did find it interesting that he gets to play on a line every single night with Austin Matthews. How lucky it is that he gets to do that. I'd have to look into it a little bit deeper, but I'm pretty certain that 20 of Marner's 28 assists have come from a goal scored by Austin Matthews. I am almost certain that his assist numbers are in big thanks to Austin Matthews' 21 goals so far this season, which, Austin Matthews, you're a beast. Like, calm down. Like, actually calm down. The other player that I had in mind was Tyler Toffoli, who currently plays for the Montreal Canadiens. Fun fact, 9 of his 15 goals this season have been scored against the Vancouver Canucks. So how lucky of it is it for Tyler Toffoli to play the Vancouver Canucks as much as he has so far? So lucky for him, because he has the Canucks number, he has their zip code, he's got their credit card, like he's got all their information. Like, somebody arrest this man now and like help Vancouver with this mess of Tyler Toffoli. First of all, I also find it ironic that Tyler Toffoli left the Canucks and is now scoring so much against them. So in this case, lucky he left, lucky he's playing against them. That's the only way I can describe it with Mitch Marner and Tyler Toffoli. It's just quite simply the luck of the Irish. So I have no end for this segment, so I'll just take a small bow. So moving right along, it's time to talk about our favorite teams, because as you guys may or may not know at this point, I am a New Jersey Devils fan to my detriment, and Tom is a New York Rangers fan to his detriment. Speaking is fun. So anyway, it is time to talk about what our favorite teams did this week and maybe complain about what they've done or praise what they've done. So Tom, it's time to enter that Rangers realm. What's going on in Ranger land, Tom?
Well, after last week with all the positives I spoke about and how everything was going very well, everything didn't go very well after I said that. Obviously, Sunday night before we recorded last week, they had that 5-1 stinker against the Pens. That's, it is what it is, I thought I was going to sweep that under the rug. Came out Tuesday night against the Pens and played one period of hockey. They looked good in that third period. Problem is, they really didn't look so good in the first and the second. And as we all know, a hockey game is 3 periods long, which means you usually got to play all 3 of them in order to win. And they didn't do that. So I figured, you build off that positive third period you had against the Pens on Tuesday. You come out strong against the Bruins on Thursday. Yeah, they didn't come out at all against the Bruins. They didn't even play. I tried to watch the whole thing. It was maybe the first game this year. I didn't turn it off, but I got up and started doing stuff around the house just because, this was horrible to watch on Thursday. This was the worst game they played all year Thursday night. So, Saturday, as I had mentioned, I was down in Tom's River playing in the St. Patrick's Day tournament down there, and I didn't really see most of the game Saturday. They had the game on in the rink. I caught bits and pieces of it, but a great thing happened Saturday. And, it was the ending of one of the biggest BS accusations and biggest BS news stories of the year. Artemi Panarin, the bread man himself, came back on Saturday afternoon. And it was a dominant 4-0 win over the Bruins. He had an assist on Ryan Strom's goal, and that team just looks so much better when Panarin's in the lineup. And you know what? It should be. Panarin is obviously the best player on the team right now. Obviously, we know Kreider's having a hell of a year, which is great, but Panarin is still far and away the best player on this team, and they need him there. Youngest team in the league. They need a guy like Panarin to lead him. He leads by example. Panarin, he's not a loud guy like Mark Messier, not like a loud leader, but you see what he does on the ice. You see how he plays on the ice. He's good in all areas. He really is, and it was very good to have him back. And then on top of Panarin coming back, we got some other news coming out of Russia in terms of a player coming out of Russia. That player's name, Vitaly Kravtsov. Kravtsov apparently left Russia after his team was eliminated from the KHL playoffs last week. He is in New York right now. He's going through the COVID protocol. He's also going through signing his just through some contract issues with the Rangers, which should be hammered out. They're saying within 7 days he can join the team and start practicing with them. And, it's a guy who, under normal circumstances, had we had a normal 82 this year, had we had a training camp in September, a guy who would have been here. And a guy who maybe should have been here last year. And I'm so scratching my head in terms of why he didn't make the team last year. But then again, my patience with David Quinn is running a little bit thin as well. I don't understand. There's times I watch Quinn and I just don't understand what he's doing. He's running this like a college mode. The freshmen play, and then the sophomores play a little more, and then the juniors. This is the NHL. This is the NHL. Age doesn't matter. You have the youngest team in the league. You have two young stars in Kako and Lafreniere. They need to play more. I'm sorry. I like that you're playing on the third line with Hedel, making a kid line, but they need to be out there more. He was dropping Lafreniere to the fourth line on Thursday night, and for no reason at all. I don't understand it. If Lafreniere was playing terribly, then yeah, dropped on the fourth line, sit him. Lafreniere was not playing badly. Was he dominating? Absolutely not. But he wasn't doing anything to warrant putting him on the fourth line. Come on. This is like when John Tortorella decided to put Mary and Gabrick on the fourth line. And unfortunately, with all these guys coming over, with the personnel that we have here, with Kravtsov coming over, and we're hopefully going to see Nils Lundqvist over here next year, it may be time to find somebody else to lead this team into the next step. I'm not anti-David Quinn. I'm not pro-David Quinn. I just think David Quinn, and I hate to use this word for him, is kind of cannon fodder. He's kind of that coach where you're like, okay, we have a rebuilding team here. You want to get some experience behind the bench, we're going to rebuild. You have your free pass to lose games. We don't care whether you win or lose. We're playing for draft picks. We're playing so you can bring some kids along. But now with all these guys coming into the roster and then wanting to take that next step, he might not be the guy for the job. The same thing happened over in Chicago with Dennis Savard. He was there, greatest black. Well, I don't know if he's the greatest Blackhawk in history, but a very, very beloved Chicago Blackhawk. When he was there the first season with Taves and Kane. But the minute with Taves, it's actually the first season with Taves and Kane. The next season, where they wanted to turn that corner and they knew they couldn't do it with him, he was out and Joel Quenneville was brought in. And at the time, Quenneville was not a Stanley Cup winner, but he had been on teams that had sniffed it. He coached St. Louis in the 90s and 2000s, and the biggest problem with them is you had Detroit and Colorado in front of them. And there's a guy now in Gerard Gallant who's available for that job. And, maybe I mentioned this in earlier episodes, but maybe the tires need to be kicked on Gerard Gallant again. I'm just not sure David Quinn has any more time left with the Rangers. I just think he needs to be an assistant somewhere or go back to coaching the college ranks. I'm just not sure this is working anymore with him. We shall see what happens, but this team can't seem to catch a break now either. I just got some news before we started the show tonight that we have Pavel Buchnevich, Adam Fox, and Phil DiGiuseppe all in COVID protocol will not play versus the Flyers tonight. But that Finnish kid who was laying it up down the AHL, and because this is just, despite it being a St. Patrick's Day show, it should be butchered the hell out of Finnish last name show. Because we have Tarmo Riainen coming up, and I butchered the hell out of it because it's a Finnish last name, and that's what we do. Why can't their names just be Kakko or Tikkanen or Lundell? Easy names. No, we can't have that. But he's going to come up and play tonight, so I'm curious to see how he plays back there. So we shall see, and hopefully things turn the corner for the best. Hopefully the three players I mentioned, and Fox, Buchnevich, and DiGiuseppe are okay. We get them back. We get Kravtsov on the ice, and maybe make a little push here in the second half of the season. Stranger things have happened before. We shall see.
It'll be interesting to see, especially with the Rangers potentially going on all cylinders going forward. I mean, I'm interested to see what Kravtsov can actually do in the NHL. That's going to be something to follow for me. So I'm excited to see that. But it's time to enter my Devil's Den as per usual, which I'm doing my best Patrick Elias impression today as best as I can, since we are celebrating St. Patty's Day a little bit early. Unfortunately, yes, I've got the captain's patch, but it's not actually a Patty Elias jersey. It's actually
Jamie Langenbrunner. That's what is that? A German last name? I don't know.
Probably, definitely not Irish. That's for sure. But I needed the captain's patch today. That's how, I certainly remember, Patty with, coming out with the Irish hat from time to time. But I seem happy right now, but like, it was a rough week for the Devils. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was a rough week. They got 2 points this week from an overtime loss on Tuesday against the Washington Capitals, and then a shootout loss on Sunday against the New York Islanders. And I alluded to this before when I talked about the Islanders getting the luck of the Irish, but man, they got the luck of the Irish yesterday on Sunday. We're recording this on Monday. I'm still stewing about that game from yesterday. I'm still really salty about the officiating. A bogus interference call on Nathan Bastian took away the go-ahead goal in the third period. And then a questionable offside call took away the game-winning goal scored by PK Subban in overtime. Now, yes, after watching it back, Jesper Bratt needs to be better about getting that foot fully back before the transition. Yes, it was a rookie mistake, but it also highlights, how some teams misuse their video review. And it's frustrating because this was not the intent of video review in this case. But just overall, terrible officiating. There were missed calls on the Devils, even on the Islanders as well. There were missed calls on the Islanders as well, but just terrible officiating. That being said, the Devils are still trying to play cleaner hockey. There's one big thing to keep in mind for those frustrated Devils fans out there, which there are a lot of you. Trust me, I conversate with a lot of Devils fans on Facebook and on Twitter. And for some of you guys are realistic. Some of you guys are not realistic at all. And you guys need to figure it out quick. But here's one big thing for those frustrated fans that are saying, oh, trade this guy. We need to get rid of this guy, or we need to get rid of this. Why can't they do this? Or why can't they do that? The Devils went and were off for 2 weeks because of COVID. And they were out because of that entire outbreak. They could not practice. They could not play. They could barely work out. They couldn't even do anything as a team. They had to do things individually. Meanwhile, in those 2 weeks, the entire league was playing games. Where in that 2 weeks of not playing, each team got at least 6 to 8 games to play and refine their skills. The Devils couldn't do that. They're still playing that catch-up. Plus, they haven't been able to truly practice these in-game strategies in these in-game situations, which I don't think a lot of people really realize how important that practice still is for professionals. It's insanely important. And the fact that the Devils are missing out on that, that's huge right now. So it's understandable why they're rusty right now. It's understandable why it looks rough right now. It's a rough season in general. Now, speaking of rough, pun intended, I do not like seeing anybody talking about how, Lindy Ruff needs to go. Because I've already heard from a couple people saying that, and those people need to stop that now. That is a terrible mentality. He is one of the best things going for the Devils right now. He is the right coach for the Devils right now and going forward. He is not a transitional coach in this case. This is a coach that is here for the future. This mentality, if he needs to go, needs to stop and needs to be nipped in the bud and just go away now and lose it. Lose that mentality. He's shuffling lines right now, which when fans look at this, question it because they saw John Hines do this last year and everybody said this wasn't working. Oh God, Lindy Ruff is shuffling lines. This isn't good. But here's the thing. Where John Hines shuffled lines early in the season, he was in the wrong for doing that. He was trying to figure out the right matches at that current moment, and nothing stuck. What Lindy Ruff is doing right now is he's shuffling lines to see those combinations for next year. He's playing the long game right now. He's seeing what players are going to stick with this roster after this year. Because you have players in development right now that are going to push some of these players out, whether they are traded, whether they are released, whether they are just let go in free agency. So there are some Devils players that, or dare I say, all Devils players that are going to be on the hot seat right now because you've got prospects such as Alexander Holtz, Nolan Foote, Kevin Ball, Riley Walsh, all guys that are going to be knocking on that door soon And the Devils are going to need to decide what players are going to stick in this lineup going forward and what players are best to just cast off in trades for draft picks or other building needs. So when I see Lindy Ruff shuffling these lines right now, I'm not worried. I see this as, okay, what players work well together? What players could we realistically use in situations next season when we have enough practice time? Which players are worth sticking around and building as our core? So don't panic. It's a rough season. It's a tough season. For the Devils, they're playing in a tough Eastern Division right now. If they end up not going to the playoffs this year, I'm not hurt. If they end up getting a high draft pick this year, so be it. But, you have to know what you're accepting with this. I'm not saying this season is lost, by no means. But after some rough play of late, it makes sense to shuffle the lineup up a little bit and see if it benefits some of those players. But we're just going to have to see going into this week. The Devils have some interesting teams to play this week, namely Pittsburgh in a 3-game set, which Pittsburgh has been hot as of late. So it's just going to be interesting to see how this week goes for the Devils. It could be good. It could be, same stuff as always over the past couple of weeks, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Now we're going to dive into some of our general NHL weekly thoughts, things that we thought were interesting from this past week. Tom, what's your highlight from this week? What did you find interesting?
A little tidbit I read yesterday afternoon. It was posted by Chris Johnson. He's one of, obviously up in Canada, you have Bob McKenzie and Darren Drager as your top insiders. But if you go like maybe just a little bit below that, you have Chris Johnson, who's also a credible guy as well. And then some general managers are making noise to Gary Bettman that they want to keep this all-Canadian North Division going for next year. And, and it's understandable why, you guarantee 4 Canadian teams in the playoffs. You guarantee all the first 2 rounds are all in Canada. You have fans in the building. It's intense, creates rivalries throughout the country. It's a great thing. It's Canada. Hockey is still Canada's game, even though it's gotten, more internationalized. It's still Canada's game. It still is. In my opinion, it is. We're all both American here, but I still got to tell them that. Battles up north have been great. It's going to create a problem, though, with Seattle coming in. If you have Seattle coming in next year, you're forced to put a division. You're forced to make a division of 9 teams. Mostly the Western Division or the Central Division becomes a 9-team division. Theoretically, you could relocate a team, which right now I don't know if that's possible with COVID and everything. And the other problem is, where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it in Quebec City? Some people are saying yes, but I know Gary Bettman is really shining away. Quebec City is a very, very, very small market. If you were going to put another team in Canada, I'd say you have to go into Southern Ontario. You'd have to go to Hamilton. But then again, that hurts the Buffalo Sabres. And haven't they been hurt enough? A lot of fans do come over the border from Hamilton to go to Sabres home games. So, while it is a great idea, I just don't think it would happen. If you can somehow relocate a team up there in the future, maybe you revisit it. But the good thing is that if you were to keep the format the same, is where you have the four second round winners coming out of the division, you guarantee a Canadian team in the final 4 every year. And that's a 25% chance of having a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup final. So great idea, but I just don't think it's going to be executed. You never know, though. Stranger things have happened. Remember when Anaheim relocated to not Anaheim, what am I saying? Atlanta relocated to Winnipeg. That literally happened. That just happened one day. I was at work one day in Bergen County, and a friend of mine says, "Hey, did you hear about Atlanta moving to Winnipeg?" I says that can't be. I says that you need time to do these relocations. These things take months. He showed me the article. I says, "Wow, that was quick." So stranger things have happened, but as of right now, I don't think this is feasible, as cool as it would be.
It's interesting. It's something that we can monitor, and I don't know how feasible it is. One thing I did want to highlight real quick, because it does directly relate to talking about maybe the Seattle Kraken coming in next year. This is one of my highlights. I have another highlight after, a more legit highlight, but I just found this very amusing. Right before we started recording, I was just on hockey Facebook, because sometimes there are memes that are posted, and this one wasn't a actual meme. This actually came from a Buffalo newspaper that did this.
I know you're talking about it.
Yep, so this Buffalo newspaper put out a power ranking of the current teams after this past week of hockey, and they did a 32 team power ranking instead of a 31 team power ranking because this Buffalo newspaper actually had the stones to actually put the Seattle Kraken above the Buffalo Sabres in their power rankings from this past week, with their justification being for the Buffalo Sabres being number 32 on a list of 31 current teams in the NHL on their power rankings was, quote, a circus act that deserves to be below a yet to start expansion team. Just too funny. And I'm sorry, Buffalo fans. It's just your tears are tasty. Anyway, so my highlight for this week, a player that I wanted to highlight, and for whatever reason, the past couple of weeks I've just been highlighting Los Angeles Kings players, and it continues this week. Adrian Kempe. Wow, he had a really, really good week. Going into Friday, he had 6 goals in 3 games. Just a stunning, play. He didn't have that great of a weekend. He was pretty quiet over the weekend, but he's been on fire as of late, which has only been helping Los Angeles. And, he is one of those players that Los Angeles is currently building around. So it's going to be interesting to see if his momentum continues into this coming week, which once again, I have him on my fantasy team. So put up or shut up in this case. So lastly, as per usual, it's time to get into our listener question of the week, which normally how this goes is I usually go onto Twitter or Facebook and ask what is a question that our listeners have for this week. And if you are lucky, you might be that lucky person whose question we highlight in a future NHL video such as this. Or I would say normally such as this, because this week, life kind of happened this week for me, and the time got away from me because of a lot of stuff happening in my life. So I wasn't able to actually get around to actually asking a question on Facebook and on Twitter, which my apologies to those listeners who do look forward to that. We will be getting back to that this week. I promise you on that one. But I instead decided to just kind of go around Facebook and Twitter, just scrolling through our follower feed and just trying to find maybe some relative and consistent talk around the Twitter sphere, which one interesting question that popped out to me, this wasn't from anybody particular, but it was just consistent a lot of our followers' feeds. Who was the most interesting or desirable trade target for this year's trade deadline? Which I think we can kind of latch onto this because this is something that we're going to expand on in the coming weeks as we get closer to the trade deadline. We are about a month out exactly from the trade deadline at this point, but it's interesting to start at least getting the wheels turning on this thought. So for me, probably the most interesting name to me right now available at the trade deadline, and sorry, Buffalo, the woes just keep coming because that fire sale is going to start any day now. I think an interesting name to me is Eric Stahl. And some of you might think, like, Eric Stahl, like, what is he going to offer a team? I'll tell you what he offers to a team. A consistent center, where there are teams out there that don't have consistent center help and need some help in the faceoff circle. And Eric Stahl is one of those players. He's a player that could benefit a Carolina team, maybe having a reunion with, Carolina. He could benefit a Florida team that could use some center depth at the moment. He is a player that, if the Rangers are in contention, he's a player that on a cheap option, the Rangers could look.
No way. No way. We tried that once. Never again. No way.
But maybe. I knew I would trigger Tom with that one, which actually segues are cool. Tom, who do you think is interesting in this free agency?
What? I'm hearing a lot of rumbling, and we're stuck. Yeah, we're stuck on the Buffalo bus, I guess.
The Buffalo bandwagon bus.
The Buffalo bandwagon bus. How you doing, Frozen 4 guys?
How you doing?
Man, condolences to you, man. That's
oh yeah.
Taylor Hall is a name that's really been kicked around, and I know Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders have really been trying to kick the door down on him. I know Lamoriello really wants him there. Hall's played in the area. I don't think he'd have a problem coming back down. So that'd be kind of interesting to see what would happen there. Funny you mentioned Stahl there. I mean, he can also play the wing. But if you look at the Vegas Golden Knights, I could easily see him going out there too and being a big help over there, Eric Stahl. So we'll see what happens. I guess the biggest problem with Taylor Hall right now would be the contract. Buffalo would have to eat some of the money, I think, because I don't know if anybody would take him right now for that full deal. Luckily, it's a one-year deal, and then you can maybe work with him. Other teams I know that have kicked the tires on him are his former team, the Edmonton Oilers. I know in the past have. I know the Colorado Avalanche have wanted him to, and if you add him to the Avalanche, I mean, I don't want to say the Avalanche have been underwhelming this year because they haven't, but I just thought that maybe we'd be getting a little more out of them. So you could see him going there too. Just a couple things. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with him there. I know Lou Lamoriello. I guess one of the blips on him is the minute he brings in a superstar, the team usually implodes. See Ilya Kovalchuk in New Jersey. I'm sure Brian had a fun year that year when he came in, and everyone expected them to go somewhere, and they didn't. But yeah, him and like I said, Eric Stoll too. We'll see what happens with those guys. Like we had mentioned before with Eichel, I just don't think he's gonna move the deadline. I just don't see it. That's pretty much all I got from me. So it's going to be an interesting few weeks to see where these guys go.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And we're going to be tracking this over the course of the next coming weeks. So if you're a junkie for trade deadline talk, we're going to be getting into that very, very soon. If not next week, certainly the week after. We might need to circle our wagons back to talking about the situation in Buffalo currently, which we might need some help talking about that if we end up talking a little bit about that. But guys, as always, what do you guys think? Do you agree with our Luck of the Irish assessment? Are there other players or teams that you thought of for Luck of the Irish? What do you think of our assessment of the Rangers and Devils? What do you think of our NHL Weekly thoughts? What do you think of our thoughts in general? Well, we want you guys to talk to us, and the only way you do so is to like, comment, and of course, while you're liking and commenting on this video, please make sure that you subscribe to IAD Sports, which we are going to be doing so much more over the coming weeks with the introduction of new content as well coming your way through IAD Sports. So please make sure to check out our content there. You can also check us out on Twitter at I80_sports NHL, which, guys, thank you so much for the follow so far. It's been really, really awesome to see each and every single week. Those follows just keep climbing and climbing and climbing. Thank you guys so much for that. We love it. We really do. And we love to be able to talk to you guys on Twitter as well. It brightens our day every time that we get to reply to different things that you guys have to say. And of course, make sure you check out our website, i80sports.com, which if you liked my little St. Patty's Day shirt from before, there are other shirts and styles out there that might fit your needs and get that fix of I80 Sports merch out there. So please make sure that you check out our shop at i80sports.com as well as our other content on i80sports.com. But that's going to just about do it for us out there. I'm going to go read a dictionary and figure out the English language finally. I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been I80 NHL.